It's a man. Man. I should put that in there, right?
Yeah.
I missed the bus, and so I got here late, and so I'm like had to rush, man, to write on it. Latinus, that word they're arguing and say it means Latin man, which means Rome. However, it's not used in the Greek Old Testament. It's not used in Jewish literature like Maccabees, Psalms of Solomon, the Sirach, not in the New Testament. Okay, so Latinus it would not have been understood by, it was not used. It was not used at that time, at the time of John's writing. Then there's the suggested Titan. I typed it out. I typed the Greek word on the internet. I searched for the Greek word on the internet. I couldn't find any information before Irenaeus. Okay, so we don't know where he got that word from. He doesn't talk about it. Then some people say, well, that's Titos, that's Titus. Tito in Greek is Titus, and Titium is Aramaic. Okay, that's all for Titus. Some suggest maybe Titus, but there's no explanation for that word. And then there's Nero Caesar. Okay, and however they say, well, you're going back to Hebrew, John wrote in Greek. It doesn't make sense in Greek. Okay, we've got everything that we've got the Greek, we've got the Greek words, and it doesn't make sense in Greek. And they say, well, you go, and then the Hebrew that you're using, the Hebrew spelling that you're using is not the correct Hebrew spelling, but we have evidence to suggest otherwise. And then there's the argument that six equals fallen man, because you go to Genesis 1, 6 is assigned to man. And so we see that, 7 means perfection. Okay, and so 6 means that you're short of perfection. Okay, man is always falling short of perfection 3 times. 6. So man falls short of 7. But Genesis 1 does not say that. Genesis 1 says day 6. And God says it's very good. So there's nowhere in the Bible that 6 is assigned to man. And then there's I think I misspelled that. Revisionist myth on Nero, that Nero was supposed to be
Hitler. Yeah.
Nero comes back alive. That's going to fit into the name with the beast.
That's great. Nero's coming back alive, asking you?
No.
Yeah. What do you say?
Example.
Oh,
well.
I'll put down EX. Example. In our culture, we've had movies and TV shows that talk about even comic books. Yeah. Stories where Hitler is still alive.
Oh my goodness, he'd be dead by now, wouldn't he? Is he over 100?
I don't know. But that was very.
There's all kinds of misinterpretations of Revelation. How you doing, Miss Anita? That's good. You like the new place?
It's going on.
Is it? Yeah, because I know what you used to. And I know how space you used to. You bigger.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still squeezing things in or giving them away. You can't keep it.
I'm trying to give it away, but it's hard for me.
It is.
I mean, I can give it, but I always feel it.
I have many things that I have collected over the years that are that come to mind. They're meaningless, but to me, the
Sentimental.
Of the sentimental value.
Yeah, I know.
And it's quite that is priceless.
I know, that's why I hate my kids all there. This is yours. No one wants the photos, so isn't this something?
I took all these pictures when I was little babies. Yeah. People don't have photos anymore.
I know. Apparently, I know.
Yeah. I know. I can't believe you didn't want your childhood, like the memories from.
I had to make them. My boy stuff I took to their father, I put in the basement. There you go. That's your stuff. Aaron said, and I just drove up there one day with it in my car. There it is.
Take it, you throw it away. Yeah, it's hard to throw things away that have good memories.
Yes, that's especially stuff I say. So wait a minute, what do you mean?
Well, I tell you, I was born in Gary, Indiana. My family had migrated from Tennessee up here, when the steel mills.
Mhm.
And I grew up extremely poor. And my family was uneducated. And when I think I was the first one to graduate from high school in my family. And I went to work. And I had very nice people that I worked for. And it seems like I got such a nice beginning from such a poor background.
Sorry.
It just, you don't realize it at the time. You know, I was a good job, I had, no trouble when I moved about. And it was all, I think, because of the education. Although I never went to anything. But I just, it was just, I think education is pretty good for you sometimes.
Yeah, because it's more than just about academics, not just school.
Right,
Character building.
yeah.
Yeah, you learn the value of hard work, and then your
Yes.
future employers probably.
Yes, they benefit.
Yeah, that, that's so, I never thought of that before, but so you learn how to work.
Mhm.
You learn how to work.
Come in.
She must have come in too.
Trying to close that door.
Going at steps is good.
You wanna scoot your chair a little bit?
Mhm.
This is one more space there, we just kind of jammed up. Thank you. Yeah, it's great. We're better than you think.
So how was it? Did you talk to them at the bank?
No, I didn't. Oh, okay. It's here too.
5 minutes to go on what's on the board, less than that.
Okay.
Let's get ready to start.
The meeting is being recorded.
To interpret at the appropriate time.
Yeah. Okay. Welcome. We're glad you're here, and we're plowing along through Revelation, and I can see Michael has a lot of things to recite, but we'll go into the 12th chapter. The woman and the dragon we talked about last time. A dragon was called the devil or Satan. Later on, he's going to be referred to specifically as the serpent. But we were talking about what seems to be the climax of Revelation. There's been some opening of seals. There's been some trumpets. There's been some activity that seems to be to warn people, to show that God is dissatisfied with those who persecute Christians, and that he's going to do something about the situation. Up till now, what's been done has been a partial. It's always been couched in the language a third is destroyed, or it's for a temporary period of time. But now, as we saw the seventh trumpet, it seems to be the climax, the ultimate judgment of God upon evildoers, and the ultimate vengeance, and the answer to the question that we saw when the fifth seal was opened. Remember that question? How long the souls of those who had given their lives for Jesus said, how long is it going to be until our sacrifice is, the recompense is taken for those who killed them? And it seems as we go into these chapters here, starting in the end of the 11th and in the 12th, that that's what we're getting at. How long? Yes, come in. Need some Korean books.
Thank you. Sorry.
No problem. So, John sees a sign in the first part of the 12th chapter, a woman who is ready to deliver a child, and there's a war, and the dragon is in front of the woman. He wants to devour her child. She gives birth to a son. Her child is snatched up to God and to his throne. And as we read this, we're reminded of Mary, who gave birth to the Christ child, and efforts made by Satan to destroy him in infancy through the instrumentality of Herod. But really throughout his life, Satan was making efforts to destroy him. Why do you think these scenes are revealed to John here in this time, in this book of Revelation? John, I don't know that he was necessarily around at the birth of Jesus. Probably not, because that occurred in Bethlehem. And then Jesus went back to Nazareth in Galilee. His family was fishermen. They probably were from from the town of Capernaum.
They wouldn't have been there unless they were there for the census, right? If his
Right.
family was from Bethlehem.
Right,
We don't even know if he was younger. He might not have been born yet.
right. That's right. He may not have been quite as old as Jesus. And maybe, we assume from our vantage point that, and we've heard these stories about the birth of Jesus, over and over in our lives. And maybe to John, he didn't know all the details. I don't know. It's revealed to him in a way that it's the spiritual struggle is emphasized more than the physical aspects of the coming of Jesus. And that's is concept is strengthened as we see the war in heaven. Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon. The dragon not strong enough.
Can I just a minor question about
Yeah,
what is saying that Jesus is going to be ruling with a rod of iron? It's not literal. So why is it that part?
no, it's used earlier in the Old Testament.
Psalm 2.
Psalm 2, we talked about that last time. The Messiah will rule with a rod. In other words, his rule will be irresistible. Iron was the strong element at that time. They didn't have anything stronger. So a rod of iron.
It's considered a shepherd's rod.
Yes, I'm the good shepherd also.
Yeah.
So one who is going to make war against his enemies and prevail, but also one who is merciful and tender with those who believe and who follow him. Here, the vengeance is emphasized to strengthen the faith of those of John and those to whom he's going to tell of this vision, including us. So that's, I think, the purpose, that the vengeance of God is going to be irresistible. So anyway, the loud voice says, now have come the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ. The dragon is hurled down, and he's hurled to the earth and his angels with him. We might say that he was bound, is a word that we'll run across as we look at this. Jesus said at one time, you can't come into a strong man's house and steal his goods unless you bind the strong man. That's the old King James word. The New International says unless you tie him up. And what does that mean? We'll be seeing more of that as we go along in Revelation. But remember that concept of tying up or binding the strong man to destroy or to take his goods and destroy his place. Anyway, Satan's hailed to her. The accuser has been hurled down from a place in heaven to a place on earth. Where would you rather be? Heaven. It seems to be a come down for Satan to be cast to the earth, because it's his last chance to tempt men before he's finally destroyed. And the earth is replaced with a new earth. So anyway, those who gave their lives for Jesus overcame him by the blood of the Lamb, by the word of their testimony. We looked at that. Rejoice, you heavens, and you who dwell in them. Woe to the earth and the sea, because the devil has gone down to you. He's filled with fury because he knows that his time is short. We better move along. I know that Michael wanted to get to the end of that 13th chapter. We may or may not. When the dragon saw, this is kind of where we were. When the dragon saw that he had been hurled to the earth, this is verse 13 of chapter 12. He pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. The woman was given the 2 wings of a great eagle so that she might fly to the place prepared for her in the desert, where she would be taken care of for a time, times, and half a time. There's that expression again. A time, times in plural. So at least 2 plus 1 and a half a time, 3 and a half. That's the half of 7, which seems to be the perfect number. And we saw the 1,240 days and the number of months. A lot of references to 3 and a half. Then from his mouth, the serpent spewed water like a river to overtake the woman and sweep her away with the torrent. But the earth helped the woman by opening its mouth and swallowing the river that the dragon had spewed out of his mouth. Then the dragon was enraged at the woman and went off to make war against the rest of her offspring, those who obey God's commands and hold to the testimony of Jesus. So what's Satan doing now? In this year 2025?
He's tormenting us.
He's after us. He's after you, he's after me. His time is short in a spiritual sense. And so that's all we got left to do, is to try to drag away God's people.
He wants to take as many of us down as he can before.
Drag them with him, yeah. So, there's this concept of rest. When we last saw the earth open, as it did to swallow the river, what was the earth doing the last time it opened?
Earthquakes? What are you talking about?
Well, there were earthquakes, certainly. The last time the earth opened, it swallowed up some people who were rebelling against God's leader, Moses. Korah and his rebellion. The earth swallowed them up. Anyway, God uses that as a sign. I saw a beast coming out of the sea. He had 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 crowns on his horns, and each head had a blasphemous name. Who do you suppose that could be?
Well, 17:11, John explains, I believe, 17:10 to 11, I believe. He says that there are 7 kings, and the 10 horns are 10 kings as well. So it's one beast, 7 heads and 10 horns. Okay, not not 7 different beasts.
It would suggest, we're claiming the Roman Empire, which had a lot of emperors, and the crowns suggest royalty. There in the Roman Empire, what was worshipped, the Caesars came to the point where they said, we're God, worship us. And there was a lot of it. But ultimately, power, secular power, was worshipped. And that led to trouble for those who followed Jesus. So the beast I saw resembled a leopard, but it had feet like those of a bear and a mouth like that of a lion. So a surprising thing.
Fast, strong, and fierce.
Yeah. Those are predators. The dragon gave the beast his power. The dragon has been identified as Satan. It's interesting, verse 15 of chapter 12, the serpent. So that's the dragon. And the dragon gives power to this beast and his throne and his great authority.
The last time we saw his throne was mentioned in the Church of Pergamum, chapter
Okay,
2:13.
That's a good point.
That they were by Satan's throne. Whether they're specifically mean exactly the same thing, okay, it's maybe a different story, but
one of the heads of the beast seemed to have a fatal wound, but the fatal wound had been healed. Somehow, perhaps there's been an impact, but it's healed. The beast is still strong and powerful. Perhaps there's been some influence for good, but not enough to topple
he's mentioned 3 times.
the beast. Yeah.
3, 12, and 14. That about the wound. Okay.
Yeah.
Stressing the wound of one of the heads. Not all the heads, it's not the body,
Just
it's
one.
the head.
So
It's not Rome, it's not the state of Rome or the Roman Empire that is struck, but one of the heads is struck. One of the kings is struck, apparently dead, and then comes back to life. According to
Yeah, there's a story about Nero.
Yeah.
He came back to life, but I don't know if that's a specific reference to that story here in the
Well, it's a
scripture.
process.
It's not explained to us, so we're just kind of searching for answers. Anyway, men worshiped the dragon because he'd given authority to the beast, and they also worshiped the beast and asked, who is like the beast? Who can make war against him? So this is, if it's wrong, then they were sitting powerful at that time.
As early as Julius Caesar started taking on. Julius Caesar started taking the honors of a god,
Yeah,
and then
They were-
Augustine, but not necessarily in Rome. In other words, it may not have been practiced too strong in Rome, but outside of Rome, the worship of the Caesars, was strong outside of Rome.
later on, the Caesars like Nero insisted that they were a god, though. So the beast was given a mouth to utter proud words and blasphemies, and to exercise his authority for 42 months. 42 months, 3.5 years. There's that temporary, not a completion, but a temporary. He opened his mouth to blaspheme God and to slander his name and his dwelling place and those who live in heaven. He was given power to make war against the saints and to conquer them, in the sense that so many Christians were persecuted and killed, and there's martyrs. He was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. The Roman Empire was kind of the worldwide empire. They don't talk too much about what was going on in China. That was always interesting. But the known world is described as kind of the European and Mediterranean world. But surely there was other stuff going on. Anyway, this empire had a lot of authority over what some kind of called the known world. All inhabitants of the earth will worship the beast, all whose names have not been written in the book of life belonging to the Lamb that was slain from the creation of the world. He who has an ear, let him hear. So, what do you think of this beast?
Well, it can't be every single person in the world. I mean, you can't have babies worship Caesar. I mean, I'm just trying to, like, when we see the word all or everybody, it's not necessarily exactly everybody or all. I mean, the context is going to tell you that.
Well, there were some who were faithful to the Lord,
Right.
certainly. Others who were faithful to the Lord and gave their lives, and there were a lot of them at that time. There's been a lot of them since that time, but kind of a concentration of people being burned at the stake, given to in the arena against wild animals, horrible results. How long is God going to allow this to go on before taking action? And one of the things that we want to get clear is there's things happening of a political nature at that time. The Roman Empire is fighting against invasions from here and there. Their soldiers are on the march. The Parthians are one that we have mentioned, who were attacking from the east. The point is that you see political events, and that if you read a history book, that's what you'll see. But these revelations to John assure us that worldwide political events are things that God is ultimately in control of. And that's what this just kind of reinforces what we learn in the Old Testament. God uses nations who are ungodly nations to accomplish his will, like a tool. And once he's through with that nation, it's as if he tosses it aside and it's overwhelmed. So we see in the Old Testament, God uses Assyria to discipline his people, the northern kingdom. He uses Babylon for a short period to discipline the southern kingdom. When he's through with them, he tosses them away and they're overcome by another empire, the Persian Empire. Then their purpose is done. They're tossed away, they're overcome by the Greek Empire for a while, until the fourth empire described in Daniel comes, and that's the Roman Empire. And we see that it's in power at this time, and it has its purpose. What would be a possible purpose of the Roman Empire as God uses it as a tool? One came to my mind.
Well, Christianity was able to spread all around
Okay.
the Mediterranean
Okay,
because they had all those roads, that they
Yeah.
constructed leading to Rome. So it was a good time for the church to be born and sprout,
what's known in history as the Pax Romana, the peace of Rome allowed communication and travel. So it allowed gospel preachers to move from Antioch and Jerusalem all the way to Spain. Paul hoped to get there, some say he did. Anyway, but also they are a vicious lot, and they discipline some of God's people who didn't accept Christ. It's the Romans who destroy Jerusalem and, in a sense, end Judaism as it was. They're disciplined. This references, of course, God's people get out of Jerusalem before it's ultimately destroyed and go to a different place, because Jesus, as prophesied, when you see the city surrounded by foreign armies, the Roman armies get out. The Jewish people didn't do that. There's a lot of history at that time about how one of the really difficult things for the Jewish people was the conflict. Some wanting to accommodate Rome, the triumphant party saying, no, we'll never surrender. But anyway, they should have. Anyway, that's just kind of taking it beyond. If anyone is to go into captivity he will go. If anyone is to be killed with the sword he will be killed. It's going to happen. This calls for patient endurance and faithfulness on the part of the saints. Patient endurance and faithfulness. There have been many, maybe not exactly the same as the Roman Empire, but there have been many forces in history that have challenged Christianity. And so this calls for patient endurance and faithfulness on the part of the saints. Whether you call it National Socialism, Nazism, whether you call it communism, whatever you call it, it calls for patient endurance and faithfulness on the part of the saints. So anyway, the beast out of the earth. Then I saw another beast coming out of the earth. He had 2 horns like a lamb, but he spoke like a dragon. He exercised all the authority of the first beast on his behalf and made the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose fatal wound had been healed. There's that reference again. And he performed great and miraculous signs, even causing fire to come down from heaven to earth in full view of men. Because of the signs he was given power to do on behalf of the first beast, he deceived the inhabitants of the earth. He ordered them to set up an image in honor of the beast who was wounded by the sword and yet lived. He was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast so that it could speak and cause all who refused to worship the image to be killed. He also forced everyone, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on his right hand or on his forehead, so that no one could buy or sell unless he had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of his name. We'll get to that. But who's this beast? What do you think?
It could be like the governors of the providences forcing people to, forcing people to, worship, forcing people into the emperor worship, prove your loyalty to the emperor. I have a note, spiritual power, the embodiment of false prophecy, used by the Roman Empire. There are some references in historical Roman histories, some suggestions like the astrologers, mathematicians, and the Chaldeans. So
It could be Hitler.
Okay.
Call him the second beast. He was a beast.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of Stalin, others who killed him.
There's a lot of wicked men in power doing terrible things.
This second beast seems to have a religious connotation, in the sense that it's the false religion, trying to set up emperor worship. There's some historians say that in some of the Roman temples, they would have an idol and they'd have a guy behind there working like a ventriloquist.
That's
and references to that's right, kind of like the Wizard.
you go to the Oriental Art Institute of Antiquities, and there's that idol statue of Horus the bird, and they have that plaque down there. They give you the information how the priest would speak through the bird and give the oracle, to the Egyptian king.
So, and there's a fire from heaven, and are these false religionists able to actually do things like that, or is it just a trick? Remember, in the case of when Moses confronted the Egyptian magicians, they could do that stuff, at least for the first few plagues, and then they couldn't. They told Pharaoh, this guy must be real, because we can't do these things. But so, sometimes we say, well, no, this was all a trick. Maybe not. Anyway,
because signs and wonders.
Signs and wonders.
He's the land beast is the one who does the signs and wonders, not the beast from the sea.
Yeah.
Okay, it's the land beast who does the signs and wonders.
Religion.
So that adds on to the fact that he's much more religious.
Of course, over the centuries, this has been identified as various things, including the Roman Catholic Church and the Pope. As recently as, I could show you a video on YouTube as recently as October 12th, 1988. A member of the European Parliament in Brussels got up while the Pope was addressing the audience and shouted out, "This is the Antichrist." So that is when Protestantism arose, if you will. The Pope was identified as the Antichrist. Anyway, just an interesting tidbit that I've always been interested in as a follower of politics.
That's the view that the book of Revelation is written throughout all Christian history.
Yeah.
Not everybody,
Anyway,
I don't want to.
the beast or the number of his name. This calls for wisdom. If anyone has insight, let him calculate the number of the beast, for it is man's number. His number is 666.
Number of a man.
Interesting, a couple of years ago, if you remember, on the wall of our church building, on that side by the parking lot, somebody came with a spray can and put 666 there. Patrick called the alderman, and the alderman said, yeah, we have special solvent to get stuff like that off of buildings. So they came and rubbed it. You can still just barely see an outline. But it's not dead. Language.
Let me explain this on the board.
Okay, Michael has studied this. He has wisdom.
Okay, so John's saying, you need wisdom. Okay, he's challenging the people to look much closer into, what he has to say. So we've understood it thrown around as 666. It's actually 666, and 666 is not the same thing. What we see as numbers today are actually Arabic numerals. They were created in the 7th century. The original languages used words. Okay, so you got hexacosii, hexaconta, and hex. So we go back as far as Irenaeus. He's the earliest to comment on the number. Irenaeus gives out serpent, Latinus, and Titian. And the problem with serpent is that it's, John says this is a person, it's a man's name. Okay, not man's number, but we'll get to that. Latinus, okay, that is a Greek word. They argue and say, well, Latinus means Latin man, and therefore Latin man is Rome. However, that's not used in the Greek Old Testament. It's not used in Jewish literature like Maccabees, Psalms of Solomon. Okay, it's not used in the New Testament writings. So it's what I read was it's local and it was used in the 2nd century, not the 1st century. Then there's Titan, which I looked for the Greek word on the internet for information, but I couldn't find anybody before Irenaeus to use that word. There's some suggestion that that refers to Titos, which is the Greek word for Titus, and then Titan. It's Titon is the Aramaic of Titus. So they somehow say, well, that's what Titian means, but it's not a man's name, and we're not sure if it is connected to the god's name Titan or not. So the conclusion is the Greek is nonsense. Trying to use the Greek to calculate the name is not working. Then there's a suggestion that it means Nero Caesar. The criticism about that is that, well, why are you using the Hebrew? And John wrote in Greek. well, it doesn't make sense in Greek. And two, the book of Revelation is a very Old Testament book. John's language was Hebrew. They also say that, well, the spelling that you're using for Nero, Caesar, okay, is not the correct spelling. And we say, no, we have evidence otherwise that there are different spellings of Nero and Caesar. We have evidence of that. And it is common in languages that some names have different spellings. Nero, it's Nero in Latin, but Neron in Greek. So, there's two different spellings for Nero. You have in English Jeff with the J, and then you have with the G. So you have, two spellings for Jeff. What happened there? Then there's the other suggestion that 6 means 6 is assigned to man.
It's running out of power. And I don't.
It's not plugged in.
It's all right.
Anyways, 6 is assigned to man. We go to
So what do you
Genesis
think?
1. We go to Genesis 1, and we see on day 6, man is created. And so 6 is assigned to man. And 7 means holy. 7 means perfection. It's used of God. Therefore, 6 is less than 7. And 3 6s show you that man keeps trying to, get perfection, but he doesn't make it. However, Genesis 1 does not say that. The 6 is assigned to the day, and God says it's very good. So how can 6 refer to fallen man? Otherwise, and then 2, I'll go back up here again, it's 666. It should be the other way around if you're going to talk about how man keeps failing. Okay, starting with 6, 60, and 600. That would show that man is really failing, but that's not what it is. Then the wound, there is a myth after Nero commits suicide, the Roman Empire goes into a civil war. After the Civil War, there's a myth running around saying that Nero is alive. And it's in the Roman literature that Greece and Asia Minor were troubled when they heard that. It's in the Roman literature. So they were quite concerned about hearing that about Nero being alive. Like, wow, what's going on here? Very concerned. And I say that we have a parallel in our culture, which is Hitler. We remember movies, The Boys of Brazil. They saved Hitler's brain. It's in comic book stories. Hitler's back to life. Okay, Hitler's running around here. Mission Impossible TV show where German scientist is trying to resurrect a dead Nazi. So
I think that's a lot of fiction.
so there's Hitler is probably equivalent to our
That's the 20th century. Anyway, the truth about Hitler is not that fiction. The truth of Hitler's body was recovered by the Russians who entered Berlin. The Americans did not. And so it was buried in a part of Poland close to the Russian border. Stalin did not believe or was worried that that was not the real Hitler. He had the body interred, examined again. Conclusion was that was Hitler. He had it buried again, this time in Russian territory. Later on, he had more doubts, had the body interred a second time and examined. They didn't have DNA.
I know, I was just thinking.
And interred again. Anyway,
What kind of test they do anyway?
what's that?
What kind of test did they do? Dental records or something?
Yeah, whatever they could. Anyway, but as Michael has said, most of the commentators think that well, obviously 6 is less than 7, and make the point it's imperfect, but that it is Nero Caesar. I know there's problems with that because they use the Greek, but instead of the Roman numeral. One commentator, just as an interesting book, named Adam Clark, who wrote a little while ago in the 19th century, had it interpreted as the Latin kingdom. So
There's Latinus,
Latinus, oh,
Latin is,
Latinus.
anyway.
That the death, the coming back to life is only said about Nero. It's not said about any other Roman king ever coming back to life. That is only said about Nero.
So anyway, that's about all we know. You can make your own conclusion. It's not a good thing because it's those who were against the Lord and his people had that number. And is it a magical thing? I don't think, I think it was meant for John and
it's astounding
we can
somebody
speak to
today would know enough scripture to know, to put that on our building.
yeah.
They watch movies, they don't know what they mean.
Anyway, if anybody else would like to do some research and recite next week, you're welcome.
Go into it.
Well, I've given you what they've said, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
stand by Nero,
Okay,
and there's more evidence
Yeah,
to
I
stand
think-
by Nero
I
too.
think that's the
Yes,
most
that's
likely.
good, Michael, that's good.
Wow,
Good student of the Bible.
So,
I've got a chart, because the letters were associated with numbers in
Letters
those
of what?
times. The
well,
letters of the Roman alphabet, or actually also the Greek, I mean, the Hebrew.
I didn't bring that in because I just like this too much.
That's a lot, yeah.
But there were numbers associated with the letters. Well, maybe I'll bring that chart in next time and let you see how one commentator came up with it.
Reminded of the saints. It's all Greek to me.
thank you.
It takes-
Thanks,
It
Michael.
takes some reflection and it takes some thinking, and that's why John says it calls for wisdom.
Is it, I don't know,
Never know for sure.
because we've been taking James, but
Speculation.
Jan's asked me to do something for her, and it's kind of the other direction.
So
I don't
where is
know.
it